Hello everyone. This is a video about my do-it-yourself collective. First, I have to tell you this is my first video of this kind. Also, English is not my main language, so please be forgiving. This is a do-it-yourself video because I made this myself, but it's not the kind of stuff that anyone can make at home. I was lucky enough to have access to a CNC machine for a short period of time, so the complete collective is made of metal, except the parts that were necessary to be made of plastic. Then why am I making this video, you may ask? First, I'm a proud daddy and want to show you my new toy. Second, not everyone have a CNC machine at home, still I hope I can inspire some people, because I love do-it-yourself projects. And lastly, I hope I can give some idea to the flight sim gear manufacturers out there. Soon it will be very obvious the main idea of the mechanism came from the Whirlpool collective. And while I'm sure it's a good product, I think it lacks a few features. I reached out to Whirlpool and asked them to send me a copy of their product for a test or review, but they said no in a very polite way, by the way, because I'm not a well-known reviewer. And I totally understand this. They just can't send a free product to anyone who asks for it, but I hope they understand that I don't want to pay more than 500 euros for a product whose design is not so satisfying in my opinion. And yes, a collective base, a grip, taxes and shipping is about 540 euros where I live, without the chair mount. So I made mine, let's see how it works. So these are the main parts. This is the axle that will be fixed to the mount. It's made of stainless steel, nicely polished. This plastic ring goes around the axle. It's made of POMC, and as you can see it's have a cut so it can be opened or closed a little. In this video I assemble it dry to make the recording easier, but in the end I will grease it with Nyogel 767A. Actually, I think this is the first part where I changed things compared to Whirlpool. It's not just the grease. The plastic ring in their collective is basically two half circles, and those are moving around the axle while using, and multiple users reported that they constantly bumping into each others, causing a very minor distraction. People say it almost feels like it has some detent. So mine is made of one piece, obviously it won't bump into itself. Also, the material, as I said, POMC, is a very high-grade plastic, have high abrasive resistance and a very low friction coefficient against stainless steel. The last means less friction in the clutch. According to my research, it's half of nylon's friction coefficient that is usually used in clutches like this, but honestly I have no idea what Whirlpool uses for that purpose. And last but not least, this is the clamp that will squeeze the ring and the axle with two screws. In mine, both screws on the upper side compared to Whirlpool, where one screw is on the top and one is on the bottom side. I'm not sure what is the purpose of this layout, but I like easier access to both screws. This is the box that will hold everything together. It's made of aluminium like the most parts. This weird looking thing is the backplate that have one purpose. This will provide stoppers so the collective won't spin around infinitely. The important parts are these three grooves, 30, 35 and 40 degrees, but I will talk more about this later. The other holes or windows are for just weight reduction. It's held in place by 6 screws. This clamp will connect our box with our lever. It was not easy to screw it in place, but it had to be done once. Here comes our clamp. And here is the part where I messed up the recording. I can't put it in place when the backplate is on, so one step back. Now that I remove the backplate, I can fix the lower side of the clamp in position. Here comes the plastic ring. And before I install the axle, I put the plastic washer under it, also made of POMC. The upper side. And now the two screws. And I think it's big improvement that I use springs between the screw heads and the clamp. This way it is much easier to set the desired clamping force. Without springs, there are only a few millimeters are the difference between completely loose and unmovably tight when tightening a screw, but with springs you have a lot more room to play with. Also, springs are assures that the screw won't come loose, but if it does for some reason, it will still have some tightening force, won't come completely loose again. To avoid that our axle is slipping out of its place, I fix it with another clamp, but first another plastic washer goes under it. And now this is the most important thing, or at least the most important difference between my collective and Whirlpool's, and that is the counterweight. The Whirlpool one doesn't use any kind of counterweight at all. In my opinion, it's a terrible mistake. If your collective is not well balanced, then you will have serious problems when it comes to tightening. To stop it from falling under its own weight, you have to tighten it really hard, and after it will be very asymmetric. When you try to push it down, it will go just by the touch, but if you want to pull it up, you will have some serious stiffness, no matter what. That's just the law of physics. And that's what counterweights are for. Seriously, it's not some new technology. It's used worldwide in different machines like cranes or even Boomwell or Shadoof. So even the ancient Egyptians used it. Now, as you can see, I made a nice chunk of steel counterweight, and it's have its own place, what I show here. Sadly, it wasn't heavy enough. The collective suffered from the previously mentioned problem. So in the end product, I had to move it way more backwards so it gives enough support to the long lever. The next part is quite small, but very important, the magnet. The lower part of this unit is just a stainless steel rod with a screw on the bottom. You can also see there is a small 2 mm hole on the side, that's for tightening. The upper part is the magnet itself, it's glued to the steel. The important thing is to use diametrical magnet if you do it like I did. Now I just screw it in place and tightening it with a 2 mm drill. And now we arrive to the electronic parts. You already saw that I used the VKB Gladiator NXT premium left-handed joystick as a grip and also used the internals of the base. I completely taken apart the base, I may say butchered it, but I did not break or cut anything, no brute force was used, so theoretically I can rebuild the original joystick if I want to, but I don't want to. First I had to solder some extra wire on the stick to reach my collective base. Okay, I made some irreversible cut here, but nothing else. Then applied some quick connectors on the end of the wires for easier assembly and kept the original connector. Here's some shrinking tube for some extra protection. If you check the Gladiator or the Cosmosima grip, you can see that it's leaning forward 20 degrees. It makes it very comfortable to use it as a joystick, but it's not ideal for a collective because I don't want it to lean towards the floor for obvious reasons. So I had to make an extra part, let's call it an adapter, to overcome this problem. It clamps on the joystick, 4 screws hold that in place. Fits snug to its place, and 1 more screw. That's just how the grip connects to the base. I think Whirlpool should come up with some adapter like this, because many people want to use or already using their collective with the Alpha grip, since it has more buttons than their collective grips, but the Alpha also leans forward, what makes it a good joystick, but not the most comfortable collective grip. This is the outer shell of my collective base. You can see some holes in this part that are not used because I made some mistakes during the manufacturing process and sadly did not have the time to make it again, but these are just small cosmetic problems. All the necessary PCBs from the Gladiator base are here. The smallest one on the middle with a white circle is originally the sensor for the Y-axis. The magnet will be in the middle of that circle when assembled, so that is our main axis. X-axis are not operating because no magnets there, but for a collective base we need only one. And the twist axis is also operating since it's in the grip. I could use it for throttle, for example, but I ended up using it as a zoom view in DCS. So now I have a collective using fully Mars sensors, what are VKB's own special invention. It's time to seal the box. And here is the last part. This piece is for mounting the unit to my chair, and also it will act as a stopper. If you remember, in the beginning there was 3 grooves in the backplate, and now we have 3 threads in this piece. So depending on how big of an arch I want, I put a screw into the corresponding thread. Now I assemble it with the 40 degrees, but I ended up with using the 30 degrees. So that was the assembly of my do-it-yourself collective, and now you can hear my final thoughts. I love how the whole thing turned out. I learned a lot during the process, and I encourage everyone to be creative and make your own stuff. Not just for saving money, but for the adventure and the development of your own personality too. I also wish that some manufacturers out there will develop their own product lines by adding some new features to their own product and developing completely new flight gears for us. In the end, I have to admit that my collective is not perfect either. Of course not, there is always room for improvement. My biggest problem with my end result is that it became quite bulky and heavy. While I don't really mind the bulkiness, but it weighs more than 5 kilograms or 11 pounds with my very own chair mount. And it may not too much if you put it on the center of the chair. Install it on the side makes my regular office chair visibly leaning to the left. So my next project will be a stand for it, probably made from aluminum extrusion. Chances are good that a Monster Tech chair could hold this weight, but it's kind of out of my budget. So it's big, heavy, ugly, but it's mine. It looks like it's come from a space pirate ship, but at least it matches in style with my custom cyclic stand and button boxes. Happy flying everyone, I hope I could inspire at least one of you, and dare to dream big. Bye.